Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And have you been told that cold calling is dead and that the phone is unnecessary in today's digital marketing age? Well, we're going to have a conversation about that today. And I think you are going to be surprised from the results. Robert, I'd love to welcome you to the show today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So let me just ask you the question. Does cold calling still work in this digital marketing age?
Short answer, yes, absolutely. And if you do any research, if you are a big fan of Frank Kern, for instance, who's the sort of the father of Facebook ads, if you listen to his podcast, he actually talks a lot about cold calling. So if it's good enough for Frank, I think it's worth paying attention to, at least giving it a listen to.
Yeah, Frank Kern is doing it, and I mean he is one of the top gurus for teaching this stuff. And he's a digital marketer. If a
Hmm.
digital marketer still uses the phone, well, I guess we should too. So, Robert, I'd like to take a moment and introduce you. Robert Poole is the co founder of Total Business Results. He helps entrepreneurs who are tied to their businesses make the transition from operator to owner in their business so they can finally achieve the freedom they got into entrepreneurship in the first place. He's a graduate of West Point, previously an Army officer, has over 25 years' experience in helping entrepreneurs grow their companies and then turn them into saleable assets that don't depend on them for the day to day operations. And today he's going to share a little bit about, how that cold calling using the phone, yeah, an actual phone, is going to help free your business and get back to the freedom and time that you wanted when you became an entrepreneur in the first place. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
You know, I always like interviewing military people because my dad was in the militia here in Canada. So he
Oh,
wasn't in the full time military, but he was part time. So I spent a lot of time at the armory watching
mm,
my dad, and I'd be there for all of his parades and the ceremonies and that. And sometimes he got high enough up that sometimes he'd have to go in, and because he was a single dad, he'd have to drag my sister and I in with him. And so I spent a lot of time just roaming around the armory and really getting to appreciate those who serve and the sacrifice that they made to do it. So thank you for your service.
yes, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you to your dad as well.
Thank you. Awesome. Um, you know what? There was something that in your bio that caught my attention, and we are going to get to the cold calling, but I think there's something in your bio that I just want to touch on, and that is the freedom that we want as entrepreneurs and how we get so tied down in the operator mode as opposed to the owner mode. So let's explore that for a minute because I think that's something that is so prevalent in today's entrepreneurs. We spend all of our time working in our business instead of working on them.
Yes, absolutely, and it's one of those things that it's almost comical because if you think about it, most entrepreneurs get into business because, well, let's face it, we don't want to have a boss. We want to do our own thing. We want the opportunity to make a lot of money. All those things, and what happens, exactly what you said, is most of the time we end up getting in, and all of a sudden we're working 60 hours instead of 40 hours a week, and we're struggling, and all that freedom, so to speak, that we were chasing is not quite there. The grass wasn't greener, and but fortunately there is a way out of that. And I did it the wrong way for many years, and just like most entrepreneurs, I was working just nonstop 7 days a week, and it really affects your family life, your personal life, just your freedom to be able to take a week off, go on vacation, do the things that are important to you. And what I learned though, and it was kind of forced on me, I had a business partner for almost 20 years, and So I came to work one day and he didn't, and turned out he had a heart attack the previous evening. And all of a sudden I was in charge of this company that I was tied down to, and I realized, boy, there's just not enough time in the day. I can't do this. And so it kind of forced me to explore ways and figure out how to unleash myself from the business. And I have two young kids and, married. And the last thing I wanted to do was spend all my time at work and miss my kids growing up. So I've over the past 6 or 7 years, I've really focused on first how to get myself, out of that mess, so I could release myself and get my freedom back to do the things that are truly important to us. Because very few of us, I've never run into somebody who, who's in their 80s and says, I wish that I'd spent more time at work. It's always the other way around. I wish I'd spent more time with my family or doing the things that I love. So I really focused on that, was finally able to break free from my own company. Not because I want to, because I love business, I love working. It is my hobby. I don't do a whole lot else, but I have the opportunity to take those moments, and so that's been so important to me that I've worked with other business owners in the last 3 or 4 years, really to show them how I was able to break free and how they can as well. So it's one of those, I like to say it's the holy grail of business, when you can take those 2 weeks or a month off and do whatever you need to do that's important to you, and it doesn't crush your business. In fact, your business continues to grow, which I think is the ultimate goal of owning a business.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. And I think today, talking about cold calling and different ways to sell is crucial, because if you can get a sales system that's not dependent upon you, or you can have others do it, I think is just so crucial. And we are going to talk about that in a moment, but first we're just going to take a quick commercial break, and I've got some freebies for you.
One of the keys to becoming an author is hiring the right publisher. It's the difference between having a book that converts readers into clients and one that sits unused on a shelf. Check out 7 questions to ask before hiring a publisher. Get it free at authortoauthority.com/publisher.
We're back. Robert, we were just talking about how, you changed your life by changing your business. And I think that is so completely fascinating. But I do want to get to talking about cold calling. So I know you know a lot about it. So I want to let you loose to talk about it for a little bit. And then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yes, absolutely. Let me start with a little history, just to kind of give you an idea how I got into cold calling. As you mentioned, I was in the Army. When I got out, the first thing I wanted to do was get into sales, and because I thought, well, that's an easy way to make money when I didn't have a business background. I figured that's good training, and so I did a variety of sales jobs, and this is back in the mid '90s, and what there was no really digital marketing back then. That's how old I am. So what was the typical thing? You advertise or you cold call. And so I started cold calling, became very good at. I've lost track, but I estimate I've made north of 100,000 cold calls over my career, and you learn a lot during that process. And when we talk about cold calling, just to clarify, we're not talking about the classic, getting interrupted while you're eating dinner, with some offer that somebody said. That's, consumer telemarketing does not really work these days. It's usually a scam. What we're talking about is professional business people calling other professionals business to business. So just to clarify that. But there's actually a lot of benefits to cold calling. People think that, now we've got Facebook ads, or we've got, LinkedIn, we've got social media, all these things, which are fantastic and they work, really well. But, just to give you an idea, if we want to really penetrate our market, we did a survey with our clients, and demographically, they tend to be a little bit older. That the average age is 44. But we found that 60% of them did not use social media at all. Even for business. And I'm not saying that's a good idea. I think we're slowly dragging them into the 21st century, so to speak. But there's literally, over half of our clients don't actively use it. So how else do you get your message out to those people? You can do it with, print advertising, certainly traditionally. And, one of the other big ways is cold calling. And, one of the great things about cold calling is that, let's say, for instance, compared to advertising of any kind, and that means, a Facebook ad, for instance, or a print ad, somebody looks at it and they go, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll do something about it. Maybe I'll click on it. Maybe I won't. But, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. With a cold call, you're calling somebody and they have to make a decision right now. And it gives you the opportunity to be a human being, because we're also missing that in our society a little bit. People kind of crave that human to human contact. So it fills that other void that we sometimes miss. Again, not to say that digital marketing is not, the way to go for certain businesses. When it comes to cold calling, it's just like anything else. It's got to be appropriate for the situation. If you're selling, $5 widgets, and you need to sell, millions of them to make a decent living, then, that's probably, cold calling is probably not going to work for you. But if you're selling a $100,000 computer system, it definitely, is, because nobody's going to go, oh, I see a Facebook ad for that $100,000 computer system. Let me click on that and buy it, put it in my shopping cart. So, it's appropriateness, but in the right context, cold calling is still very, very effective. And, we've made in our company probably, I think the last number I saw was 40 million cold calls, for our clients, and generated millions of leads and appointments. And so, the bottom line is it does work, again, for the right situation. So.
I loved how you said for the right situation, Robert, because, one thing that has become really evident to me is the fact that when you're in entrepreneurship, you've got to find the things that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one way to do your business. There's not just one way to sell. And I realized over time that each person, each entrepreneur has to figure out, what is the best way for them to sell that gets them the most results? What is the way that they are most comfortable with selling as well? And I've learned that, just because something's old school doesn't make it obsolete. And just because it's new school doesn't mean it works either.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's a big thing that I've emphasized with my clients over the years. I had a mentor of mine when I was early on in my career that used to say, everything works sometimes, but the opposite is that most things don't work for your business. You've just got to find those few things that do. And we've got to look at the totality of the type of business we're in, the industry, who are our perfect clients, our customers, what do they react to? All those factors. So like you're saying, we got to fairly evaluate all kinds of marketing techniques. And, if, digital advertising works great for you, networking works great for you, do that, and, one of the things that annoys me is that, of course, and I understand it, but, every guru out there for whatever space they're in is going to tell you, Facebook ads, everybody's got to do them. They're absolutely the best thing to do, or you've got to do LinkedIn networking, or you've got to do cold calling. You've got to do any number of things.
Videos on YouTube.
Yeah. And the truth is, they're selling you something, and they're not being honest with you, because not every technique is for every business. So you just got to try different things and figure out what works for you and do lots of that, and forget everything else. Don't get sidetracked in that shiny object syndrome, which is very easy to do in today's world. There's every guru out there is telling you that their thing is the end all to end all. But the truth is that most things are not going to work for your business. There's just a select few, and that's what you need to focus on.
It's funny, as a publisher, one of the things that I have to battle all the time is people who have been told by so-called gurus that if they write a book, everything's going to fall into their lap. And it's just not true. Don't get me wrong. A book, like if you write a book for your business, it is an incredible marketing tool. But if you don't use the tool, if you don't get it into the right people's hands, that tool's not going to do anything for you. Just because you write a book, it's not a field of dreams where all of a sudden all this business drops in your lap. It's just a tool. And that really frustrates me when people say that, oh, just write a book and all this is going to happen to you, because it doesn't. And so I always try to be honest with my clients and say, listen, everything's not going to fall in your lap, but I can teach you how to use the book. Right? Let's get the book done, and I'm going to teach you how to use that thing. And so, I really appreciate your honesty in this, and not saying that cold calling is the only way, but I think it is a valuable tool. So let's shift gears a little bit here, Robert, and actually talk about what cold calling looks like in today's age. Who do you cold call, and how do you actually make that phone call? That's always the question. Like, people would say to me, oh, well, call somebody. What do you say? Like, I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay, great. I mean, I have no problems, but what do you do when you actually get somebody on the phone?
Oh yeah, no, cold calling is an interesting animal. It's just like sales in general, I think. Let's be real. Most of us are, scared of the phone. It's a scary proposition, particularly when you're the first time you do it. Very rarely does somebody go, oh yeah, this is the funnest thing I've ever done, and they sign up for it. So it's a discipline like anything else, but it pays dividends. But the biggest thing is that it really is a skill, and people, and I say in general sales, people will say, well, they're a born salesperson or whatever. And my attitude and philosophy is there's no such thing that it's a skill that can be learned by anybody. And cold calling is one of those things. But, to answer your question, what do you say? And this is one of those things where you have to be a professional about it. And the number one thing is that you've got to think about what you're going to say. And more importantly, you've got to write down what you're going to say in advance, i.e. use a script. I've hired hundreds of salespeople and cold callers over the years. And, it amazes me the number of people that fight you and say, well, I don't want to sound like I'm reading. It's like, well, no, you don't want to sound like you're reading. And the way to do that is to have a script written, but then to memorize it and so well that it just rolls off your tongue. And people think, well, you can't do that in a conversation. We all have scripts that we use every day. When we came on the podcast, you asked me how I was doing, and I said, hey, great, how are you today? And I will probably say that 10 more times to people that I meet today, because we all have a canned phrase or phrases we use over and over and over again. And it's the same thing with calling somebody when you're picking up that phone. The difference is that we need to premeditate what we're going to say. And of course, there's, a gazillion books out there on, how to write scripts and everything. And unfortunately, a lot of them make it way too complicated because, it's, instead of writing 3 or 4 pages on how to write a script, they want to write a couple hundred so they can, write their book or whatever, But the truth is, it's actually very simple. It's getting somebody's attention. Why should they listen to you? Because you're interrupting them. You're not doing them a favor. And what's in it for them? And then, what do you want them to do based upon that information? And it's very simple, and it's got to be very simple and very short. Again, when you first cold call somebody, we have to remind ourselves that they're not expecting our call. We're the one interrupting them. They're doing us a favor, not the other way around. And so what we want to do is get their attention quickly. But, you have to introduce yourself, of course, hey, my name's Robert, I'm from Total Business Results, because that's expected, just a courtesy. But, if you've ever gotten a cold call or somebody called you out of the blue, you didn't know well, and they said, hey, my name's Bob or whatever. Have you ever been into the conversation a minute and the person will go, who is this again? What is this about? And it's because the first 15 to 20 seconds of a interrupted cold call, they aren't even listening to you. They literally, their brain doesn't hear you. I remember a phone sales trainer 20 something years ago talking about it's kind of like the old cassette tapes, if you're old enough to remember those, that have a what they call a leader at the beginning, a little colored piece of tape, that before the actual audio starts, and you don't hear any of that. And so it's the same thing. Nobody hears what you're saying in the first 15 or 20 seconds. So get through that part. And then you've got to get their attention. So you've got to say something that jolts them and goes, whoa, what did they say? So it can be, like for instance, when the Affordable Health Care Act came out in whatever that was, 2008, 2010, we were calling for a lot of insurance agents at that time. And that was a big buzz in the media. So, and a lot of business owners were very confused about it. Didn't know, are they going to get penalized, or, are they going to get a fine? Are they going to get in trouble? And so how do you get somebody's attention? We would call and have our caller say, hey, did you know that there's been some changes, with the new healthcare law, and business owners are really getting themselves in trouble? Well, any business owner is going to say, oh, yeah, I've heard these rumors, geez. And so suddenly their ears are actually listening to what you say. And then you can tell them, a quick story, which is, hey, we've helped, XYZ company down the road with, and been very successful in helping them, secure a new health plan that makes sense and prevented them from getting any fines or things like that. And then, of course, what do you got to do? You ask them to do something, hey, can I stop by on Thursday or on Friday at 10 and, show you exactly what we did with them and how we may be able to help you. So it's really that simple. It's not a long thing. A lot of times, the biggest mistake I see people make is they'll start their opening and they'll say, hey, this is Robert from Total Business Results. We've been in business for 25 years doing, health insurance, and we help people do this, and we've got these awards, and, they'll just
yada, 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 yada.
And guess what? Nobody cares. Again, the person on the other end of the phone is like, what do they care? They want to know, why are you bugging them, and why should they listen to you? So that's why simplicity and speed is really important. So I would say the biggest thing to answer your original question is, what do you say, is you want to keep it simple and give them a reason to listen to you. And beyond that, that's it, so get to the point. We're all, very busy in our daily lives. We don't have time, for a long, interrupted call, that we weren't expecting. So if that makes sense.
I love it, Robert. Like you made it so simple, and you gave us sort of that formula for what that call is going to look like. And you are correct. Like if you go, well, hi, I'm Kim Thompson-Pinder. I'm from RTI Publishing, and we've been in business for so long, and blah blah. You're right. It's all people hear is blah 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 blah. I want to hang up the phone now.
Mm-hmm. It's the Charlie Brown thing. Yep.
So one thing I was wondering though, because like a lot of our audience are consultants, professionals, speakers, thought leaders, those types of people. So they may not like be calling more traditional businesses. They are probably calling maybe longer distances where you couldn't necessarily see a person in person. So what I was thinking was like, would you offer them a Zoom call? Would you maybe offer to send them like some free information, or send them a link where they could get something of value from you? Would those be valid options as well?
Yes, absolutely. We and most of our I would say a lot of our clients are in that same situation where they're not actually physically going out to a location to speak with the business owner. A lot of it is done over the phone. And it's, because of the types of business, but also just the, environment, and people have become very comfortable with remote. So, to answer your question, that, you can say, something similar to, instead of, can I stop by? It's a, hey, are you available Friday morning? I can call you around 10, or, I could call you on Monday afternoon at 2, if that's better for you. Or, I want to, so I can show you what I'm talking about and how we help this other company. Let's do a quick Zoom call. It'll only take 10 minutes, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, and you will decide if it's something you want to pursue, that type of thing. So it can be, it doesn't have to be in person at all. It can, the point is to get a conversation flowing. You mentioned giving them some of the value, which is fantastic. Typically with the types of companies that we deal with, it's more about they want to get in front of a decision maker. So we usually ask for the appointment, so to speak, first. And then if they say, well, I don't know if I can commit to 10 minutes with you. I don't really want to do a Zoom, whatever. That's when you can say, you know what, we've got a report that we just did about what's going on in the industry. And, it's really got some valuable insights that I think you might, enjoy. Can I email that to you? And that's where I think you want to use content and value added like you're talking about. But, that may be the original point of the call as well. You may want to start with that if your content is, valuable enough that you want to lead with that, so to speak. So again, it all depends on the situation in your business, and there's no one size fits all. It's depends on the context and all that.
So while you were talking, Robert, I thought of an interesting question for you. So because obviously you've done a lot of cold calling. What are some of your favorite cold calls that you've done that maybe something really interesting or unique or strange happened on that call?
The one of the ones that it always sticks in my mind, I'll never forget this. This was early on in my career. I think it was probably my second year in cold calling, and I did residential real estate for about a year. And this was back like 1995 or 96. And so that's when we still did call consumers and residences. And, at the time, these days we've got auto dialers and things like that. But at that point, it was just starting to come on, and it was only large call centers that were able to use those. The technology wasn't available to, small individuals like myself, as a real estate agent at the time. And so I was following a real estate trainer, Mike Ferry, and he was very big believer in cold calling. And so he taught a technique that you would have two phones side by side, and you would have a headset with connected to each phone. So one, basically this headset connected to this phone, with the microphone, this headset connected to this phone. And so what you would do is you would dial, start dialing with this phone, it would start ringing, and then you would start dialing on this keypad. And if somebody picked up on, this one, then you would drop the call on the left. But if they didn't, you were already ready for the next conversation, the other phone, so to speak. So it was this way of increasing dials. But, and then of course I'm looking at a sheet that we just printed out of numbers and names, Mary Smith at, 123 Main Street. And, so in her number, you don't know anything about her, it's just a residence you're calling. And I called this one lady and talked to her because I was trying to get, people to, list their house with me. So she agreed to get to an appointment where I could come over and do an evaluation in her house, all that kind of stuff. So it was like, I was coming over to meet her at Thursday at 5 or something. And then great, everything. I hung up, went on to the next name down. And because of what was going on with the double phones, and I'm looking at this little list, I accidentally called the same number back. And I went right into my script, started talking with a lady, and I set up the appointment. And as I'm setting it up, I realized that's the same voice I was just talking to. This lady, she went through with the whole thing and acted like everything was fine. And so she set a second appointment with me. I don't know if she was doing it as a joke or if she literally, goes back to that leader thing, wasn't even listening to some guy on the phone, that she just talked to. But
or so maybe she had dementia or something and just totally forgot the first phone call.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I remember that feeling that came over me. I realized that the voice is the same. I just was the deer in the headlights of, okay, how do I finish this call, And but she went along and played with it, So so that's one of the crazy things I've done. I mean, there's so many. You call enough people, and you just get the craziness. There's we had it's not me personally, but a guy who worked for us at one time. He called a prospect, and for whatever reason, got in a little bit of an altercation with him, and he basically threatened the guy. Said, "Hey, I'm going to come over to your place of business, and I'm going to kick your expletive," and so some of this stuff that you see, as I said, you call enough people and you deal with enough people, you're gonna find some wacky stuff going on. But I think that's probably my favorite story, that I remember very distinctly as a young man.
I haven't done a lot of cold calling, but I did do a little bit. And where I always got stuck was, especially when it was like like more commercial, like I wasn't calling businesses, like it was just calling people. And you get these lonely people who just wanted to talk to you, and you're trying to get them off the phone, and they're not really interested in anything you have, but they're just so lonely, and they want to talk to you. And I'm so nice that I just
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you, and that is actually a very difficult thing to do, if you're a decent person, what I've tried to do over the years, and it doesn't work every time, and sometimes you're like, oh geez, I just wasted 10 minutes, of my life, but hey, if you spread some good vibes and make that person's life better, then okay, in the end it always works out, I believe. But yeah, I would just do something like I would try to interrupt the conversation. Oh, hey, Bob, or Mary, whatever. Hey, I've got another call coming in. Can I call you back? And of course, not real intending to call back, but that's one of the ways I used to get out of it. It's a little white lie, but but the way I look at it, in just in general, if we do something that's wasting time, we're actually kind of taking away from the people that we could be getting to, not just because I believe sales is about serving people, and so if we get tied down talking to somebody for an hour, there's maybe 3 or 4 people we didn't get to talk to, and one of those people may really need our help. So we're doing a disservice to that other person by just being nice. Again, it's a difficult thing, I mean, if you're a nice person. But you got to try to keep that in mind, that our job is to serve as many people as we can, to help as many people as we can. The only way that we can do that, particularly when it comes to cold calling, is numbers. And so I try to keep that in mind. But as I said, we're all human beings. It doesn't work every time, so. But yeah, I would try that.
Robert, what a wonderful conversation. We are out of time, so I'd love for you to do 2 things for us. First of all, share one final thought. And secondly, if people have enjoyed this conversation, how can they connect with you?
Absolutely. I would say that the number one thing that is difficult with cold calling is right here. It's psyching ourselves out. So we've got to have a strong mentality, thick skin, all that good stuff. And so do it first thing in the morning. If you go to an office or you go into your home office, whatever, do not check your email. Do not check your Facebook, your social media accounts. Don't check your voicemail. Don't do anything. Don't look at the headlines of the news, anything that could possibly be negative or throw you off emotionally, just even a hint of it, because you need everything you've got to be positive and to get right on the phone. So I would do that, number one. That's something that's helped me immensely over the years. As far as getting a hold of me, you can go to our website, totalbusinessresults.com. I'm also on the social media platforms, YouTube, and most of them are under the Robert Poole. But if you'd like some more information about, and try to figure out if cold calling would actually work for your business, if it makes sense, you can give our office a call. Number's 866-231-6776. It's also on the website. We'd be happy to talk to you about your business if it makes sense. And if you mention this podcast, I'll do this just for you, Kim. We'll give you 20% off of any fees that if you eventually decide you want to do business with us. But you got to mention this podcast because I want Kim to know that it came from her. So, again, I appreciate the opportunity. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much, Robert. If you've enjoyed today's episode, highly recommend scan on back a bit to episode 427 with Larry Levine and Daryl Amy, 2 of my favorite clients, where we talk about selling from the heart. So not only how to sell from the heart, but their book, the results they've gotten from it. So if you're on YouTube, you'll see a little thumbnail you can click. If you're on your favorite podcast app, scan back to episode 427. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching this show, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.